they're telling you that this is the end of the system. The fact that they're so darn blatant about it. And why aren't people more up in arms? I suppose that's what's showing in the spot prices on both gold and silver. And for many years, governments have been patching holes with duct tape in the economy and borrowing more money and printing cash to keep those things afloat. But frankly, now the boat's starting to leak faster and faster than they can fix it. So some smart passengers like Ray Dalio, Ken Griffin, these are big kahunas, they're grabbing golden life jackets. Why? Because they think that the boat's money system, the dollars and the government bonds, might not hold up much longer. And if the crew keeps ignoring the leaks, well, odds are more weight, more debt. That boat is sinking. Even big institutions like Canada's pension board, well, they're worried and they're saying, hey, maybe treasuries aren't the safe spot that they used to be. Oh, shocking. They were never, but I guess with a lower level of debt that could work. So what are people doing? Well, they've been jumping toward gold and toward silver. Physical. The physical markets are taking over the paper markets. Now, I know what's happening in the paper markets today. Of course, everything is severely stretched. And right now, we are on risk on. But quite honestly, with the U.S. Treasuries, well, they aren't the unimpeachable safe harbor asset that they were once, well, at least that they appeared to be. And it's a phenomenon repeated across the bond markets all over the world. Those long-term bonds, we've talked about this quite a lot. And as you can see, the percentage of foreign officials' share of outstanding treasuries, we've talked about this over and over again. They've dropped from over, well, I think in 2008, we were at 45%, and now we're down to like 15%. Hence the stable coins to create a new false market. And what about gold? Well, global central bankers have been loading up on gold, and who knows more about what they're doing, about that devaluation trade. That's the central banker's job, is to devalue the currency, but to do it in a way that you don't notice. But now we're at the end. And so things that once worked no longer work. And when you see these titles, the debasement trade, what they're really telling you is that it's time, that they're telling you that this is the end of the system. The fact that they're so darn blatant about it. And why aren't people more up in arms? I suppose that's what's showing in the spot prices on both gold and silver. But I'm going to tell you, the physical markets are now overwhelming the paper markets. We're in the most interesting place that we could ever be. And we need to talk about this because seriously, the fact that they are touting the debasement trade, and we've got headlines around it, the debasement trade is ripping across world markets because all of the global central bankers, they have no tools left. It's just more debasement. And the more that happens, the faster the inflation, the less confidence that the public has, both in the markets and in those that are leading the markets. And what's the goal here? The goal is to make this transfer into a surveillance system without you complaining, without you realizing that that's what's happened. But you're here, so I know that you do realize it. And I know that over time, you've seen me over and over again show you how silver protects your ability to buy the same goods and services over time. Gold actually expands it. And gold is outperforming every single fiat currency. Every single one of these, physical gold, physical silver, is outperforming and has been for a very long time, going all the way back to 2000. So now I'm going to take questions, but I really want to talk about what you think of this debasement trade. And do you really understand what's happening at a level that you can explain it to other people? Because you can just take a headline and show somebody and say, do you know what this means? This is why, this article is why you need to have gold, period. Deb Warner asks, Lynette, can you give a broad overview of what the exit strategy will look like for most folks? I appreciate and respect your advice. Now, it depends on, the strategy is built in layers from sustaining your standard of living. So the exit strategy actually in there is to have a level of cash, maybe a level of gold backs, maybe a level of glint or some kind of electronic convertible gold, or redeemable gold, you must have the ability to pull it out or I cannot support it. And actually, that's the kind of gold and silver that you use up.
You must possess the capability to extract it, or I cannot endorse it. And in fact, that's the type of gold and silver that you consume as required to maintain your standard of living. So that's one of the elements. And recall, this is constructed in layers, meaning there are levels within each segment of the exit plan. We also aim to safeguard the fiat currency wealth or any fortune you succeeded in accumulating. So, property is an excellent illustration of that. And suppose you're holding a mortgage. Well, part of the exit plan is the capacity to, when they perform that initial overnight reset, and I'll explain this in greater detail, but when they execute that first overnight reset, boom, the exit tactic there is to convert as much gold as you require into whatever the currency of the realm happens to be, whether it's dollars or CBDCs or stable coins or whatever form it might take. Convert sufficient gold to, bam, eliminate that mortgage. So that's another segment of the exit plan. Then, as we progress further throughout this trend cycle and those revenue-generating assets that currently have been targeted for reflation, so they're at absolute bubble levels, along with those zombie firms that truly shouldn't exist but have been sustained for numerous reasons we've discussed previously, we need all of that to flush out because, in reality, things always transition from undervaluation to fair valuation to overvaluation to fair valuation to undervaluation. That is a continual motion. So, right now they're at the extreme since people observe the markets rising, whether it's property or equities or crypto or whatever it may be, and they think, oh, that's great, but that's not the genuine trend. The true trend is the worth of the currency declining. Having stated that, when all that inflation burns away, so you have them shifting from here down to an undervalued level, and we see who endures and what precisely unfolds there. Well, if you possess gold, it preserves your buying power intact. In truth, this is more precise. It maintains your purchasing power intact. And so, then will be time to exit some of this. And depending on what we're viewing, whether it's rights or income-generating property or even dividend-yielding equities that have actually endured this, etc., then we start to withdraw from this and convert into those revenue-producing assets when they are deeply undervalued. And essentially, as a summary, that's the exit plan of when you step out. But the other element of the exit plan is guaranteeing that when you utilize your borrowable portfolio, remember, this is your principal. You're consuming your principal. When you're converting your gold into fiat to clear that mortgage, again, you're consuming your principal. When you're using your gold to transform into revenue-producing assets, again, you're depleting your principal. But that doesn't benefit you much when we're on the opposite side of this transformation. So, a major key component of the strategy is the principle that you're likely to exhaust as we move through this trend cycle gets replenished. So that by the conclusion of it, when we're in the new framework, and trust me, we are not disappearing after we enter the new system, because everyone should consistently possess a foundation of sound money in their portfolio to shield anything else they choose to pursue. So, we'll advance as you all advance. But that's a major portion of the exit plan, to recover any of that principal that we consume, any taxes, because taxation and charges and penalties and fines, These are mechanisms that the governments employ to keep you within the system and hinder you. I mean, if you examine their documents when they're constructing these systems, what do they declare? They state, well, how much of a fee? Like when they modify the money markets, it was, how much of a fee must we impose so that when individuals see that, they think, oh no, I'll just leave it there. That's the main objective, not safeguarding your wealth and assets, but determining what they must charge you. It's identical with IRAs. People say, oh, I don't want to pay those taxes. Well, you're always going to pay those taxes. You can determine when and how you'll pay them, or the government can decide when and how you'll pay them. That's your decision. But regardless of when you choose to do it, we want to guarantee that whatever fiat currency wealth you've accumulated, if that falls to zero, it doesn't affect you. What if I'm correct? What if I'm mistaken? This entire plan is about it not truly mattering if you're right or wrong, because we're going to cover every single angle. So, that's a broad outline. I'll be getting somewhat more detail than that, and doing it with visuals and graphics, etc. You just listen to Lynette Zang lay it all out. The manipulation, the shortages, the reality behind the headlines. While Wall Street dismisses it, the largest entities on Earth are quietly securing every ounce they can. The question is, will you be prepared when the system resets? If this video enlightened you, smash that like button, subscribe to stay ahead of the curve, and tap the bell icon, because Lynette's next update could be the one that transforms everything you thought you understood about money.